I think that's the other part of how I am. It's like when people mention a certain area, because when I was first starting, people told me, you got to go to New York, got to go to L.A. I was so anti that I would go to do shows and come back home, but I never wanted to move there to validate that. That was like one of the things I came into this business. I am not moving to either one of these places because I think that's a bunch of bullshit that you got to stay here or you got to be here in order for somebody to see. I'm like, well, I'm not doing it.
Not anymore.
This is in 1997 that I said that I'm not doing this shit. And so by 99, I'm full fledged stand up. This is all I'm doing. I quit both my jobs and I'm just doing stand up and I'm refusing. Like, Ali, you need to go to LA. I'm not doing it because it's like you validate that whole thing as this is the only place where to happen. So being so against it, I just pushed straight Houston, Texas. It's all about Texas to me. And I would only hear your greatness is gonna be judged by Bill Hicks. Like you chasing this ghost of Bill Hicks. So when they would mention the best comics out of the South or they would mention Texas, they would always mention Bill Hicks. I would go places and Bill Hicks would be on the wall. And I would say, what the fuck do I have to do to get in this realm? And Ralphie was like, gotta work, man. You gotta So Ralphie was in Houston when I started. So it was in Houston. It was me, Ralphie, and I think that's about the only people that people would know off the rip. So it was Thea Vidal, Sam Kinison, Bill Hicks. That was the thing. Then it became Rushion McDonald because he was with Steve Harvey producing stuff with Steve. So I looked up Bill Hicks, like his accomplishments. I was like, what has he accomplished? He was like, he did this, he did that. And I tried to supersede all that. And then I've done that, so to speak, and people still don't bring me up. Like they would literally had to talk about, let's talk about the best storytellers. Then I would be brought up. When they say comics, they still, I'm like, fucking shit.
His comedy was different because he was the first guy in my era, right? When I was an open micer, he was the first guy that I had ever seen that brought ideas that weren't necessarily comedy ideas, and he brought them to the stage. We tried to figure out a way to make things funny that were philosophical ideas, maybe more so than they even were stand-up bits. And that was one of the big criticisms of him. Some of his jokes weren't really funny. Like I remember I dated this girl once, and I made her watch a Hicks special. And it wasn't the best Hicks special to watch because it was the one that he had a cowboy hat on. It was he did it in the UK, and it was a one-take thing. And it was in front of a large audience. And I think whenever you have a one, like, this is my special, ready, go, you only have one show, you're going to be too tense. You're going to be too tight. And it just didn't seem loose. Like, I had seen him live before where it was loose. And I was like, he has just a way of thinking that is attractive. Like, he thought about things in a way, like, he explained things. He had logic to him. And so this girl was like, he's not very funny. She's like, he's really interesting, but he's not very funny. And I was like, I wanted to go, shut your fucking mouth. But I thought about it, and I was like, God damn it, she's right. Like, in this one special was not that good. Like, if you compare it to, like, Live on the Sunset Strip or Delirious or Kinnison, Louder Than Hell, like, those were way better. They were way funnier. Like, I showed her Kinnison. She was crying laughing. I was like, okay. It's like Hicks when you saw him when he was at his best, though, he just had a way of describing. Like he made sense. Like he had like a lot. There was perspective, and there was like an education behind his ideas that he was pretty rare for comedy. Like he didn't play to the level of the room. He played above that. He played to his own level, like what the things that he was thinking about. And still to this day, so he's got some, like Young Man on Acid is like one of the best bits ever. He's got some great fucking bits.
He got some
great bits. Bit about during the Iraq War, some great shit about how they were just practicing. Like they had amazing weapons. How do we know? Well, we sold them to. We got the receipts. Like, look, it's like because we did. We armed the Iraqi army, and then we went and fucked them up. But they had this bit about the war that was so different than anybody else's take on the war. Like he said, yeah, Bill. They say Iraq has the third largest army in the world. He goes, well, after the first two, there's a big fucking drop off. It's like the Salvation Army is number 4. Like he had some great bits.
Yeah.
His perspective. It wasn't obvious, It was you would watch him and you'd be like, I remember Richard Jeni, who was one of my all-time favorites. He said to me, he goes, I saw Hicks and I was like, God damn it, I need to do more of that. He goes, I need to have more of my actual opinions. Even though Jeni would murder, man. Richard Jeni was a joke-writing savage. I mean, I saw him in 1988 when I was first starting. And he was a killer. And then I worked at East Side Comedy Club on Long Island, and all the comedians were depressed because Richard Jeni had just been there. And it was on Sunday that I came down, and the guys that were there on Friday and Saturday were going, dude, he did a different hour every show. He did 4 different hours and fucking destroyed. Never told a joke twice. Did completely different material for every show, and it was murderous. And all these comics that like held on to their 20 minutes like it was just this was like a baby in a river. Like, I got you. They held on to these bits like they would never change and expand. And Jeni did 4 different hours, and everybody was depressed. I think to this day, I always say this, like, people don't appreciate that guy. He committed suicide, and people don't remember. Like they weren't there during the day. He wanted to be a movie star. He wanted to be a TV star, but he was one of the bbest comics that ever lived. And when I saw him in his prime. I saw him at a bunch of different places. I saw him in L.A. at the Laugh Stop. I saw him at the Comedy Works in Montreal. I just seen that guy murder to the point where, like, I feel like I remember thinking when I first started, like, I'm never gonna be that good. Like, I'm fucked. Like, because there's levels. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever get there. There's a top of the mountain. Like, I might die of no oxygen before I get to where he's at.
And so.
And even he was looking at Hicks like, shit, I need to do more of that.
You said earlier that as people get older, they stop learning. This is where, like, I can't even, I can't, because I don't want to miss nothing. I don't want to stop the thought, because when it comes to stand-up, I should sit here and I absorb and I listen, because I know when I came into this business, stand-up was like one thing to me. And then I started looking at all the, like, when people say, well, what were your influences? The average person expects me to say Richard Pryor, all this shit. I'm like, no, Carol Burnett, Hee Haw, fucking Don Rickles. People who I was fucking growing up seeing on TV. This is who was funny to me. Carol Burnett was fucking hysterical to me. Rodney Dangerfield, he was hysterical. Like, I stole Richard Pryor albums way later, but Lucille Ball was fucking on TV. Like, I was watching her. I didn't have to listen to her album when my parents left. Don Rickles had to be one of the funniest people on the planet to me. I don't give a damn what other people say. I'm like, yo, I was fucking hysterical.
Back in the day, he was a murderer.
Yo, so Sammy Davis Jr. was fucking hysterical to me. It's like me watching Cannonball Run. I thought everybody on Cannonball Run was fucking comic, because I'm like, yo, this had to be one of the funniest movies I ever seen. So when somebody gives you something, Billy D. Washington, this is why I like Bill Hicks, Ali, when you are not being funny on stage, be interested. You have the ability to be able to do both. And I was like, huh? He's like, be interested. Like, how you do that? He's like, okay, do what you do when you come in the barbershop and you tell us a story about something that we don't know anything about. Say being incarcerated, what it was like in this. People want to hear that story. I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, trust me. So I start putting in these little bits about me growing up or how something happened, and people start gravitating towards it. Like, oh man, what you just said, that was, man, I was thinking about it, because I hadn't got that ever when I got off stage. I got you was funny, but I never had got to the point where somebody said they was thinking about something that I said.